So this is part 2 of chapter 4 of The Hobbit, Overhill and Underhill. And if you remember, okay, the Hobbit, Bilbo, and the dwarves have been taken captive by goblins in the Misty Mountains. Okay, and we're just going to find out now what happens next. There in the shadows, on a large flat stone, sat a tremendous goblin with a huge head, and armed goblins were standing around him, carrying the axes and the bent swords that they use. Now goblins are cruel, wicked and bad-hearted. They make no beautiful things, but they make many clever ones. They can tunnel and mine as well as any, but the most skilled dwarves, when they take the trouble, though, they are usually untidy and dirty. Hammers, axes, swords, daggers, pickaxes, tongs, and also instruments of torture they make very well, or get other people to make to their design. Prisoners and slaves that have to work till they die for want of air and light. It is not unlikely that they invented some of the machines that have since troubled the world, especially the ingenious devices for killing large numbers of people at once, for wheels and engines and explosions always delighted them, and also not working with their own hands more than they could help. But in those days, and those wild parts, they are not advanced, as it is called, so far. They did not hate dwarves especially, no more than they hated everybody and everything, and particularly the orderly and the prosperous. In some parts, wicked dwarfs had even made alliances with them. But they had a special grudge against Thorin's people, because of the war which you have heard mentioned, but which does not come into this tale. And anyway, goblins don't care who they catch, as long as it is done smart and secret, and the prisoners are not able to defend themselves.
"Who are these miserable persons?"
said the great goblin.
"Dwarves and this,"
said one of the drivers, pulling up Bilbo's chains so that he fell forward onto his knees.
"We found them sheltering in our front porch." "What do you mean by it?"
said the great goblin, turning to Thorin.
"Up to no good, I'll warrant. Spying on the private business of my people. I guess thieves, I shouldn't be surprised to learn. Murderers and friends of elves, not unlikely. Come, what have you got to say?"
"Thorin the dwarf at your service," he replied. It was merely a polite nothing. "Of the things which you suspect and imagine, we had no idea at all. We sheltered from a storm in what seemed a convenient cave and unused. Nothing was further from our thoughts than inconveniencing a goblins in any way whatever." That was true enough.
Said the great goblin. "So you say. Might I ask what you were doing up in the mountains at all, and where you were coming from, and where you were going to? In fact, I should like to know all about you. Not that it will do you much good, Thorin Oakenshield. I know too much about your folk already. But let's have the truth, or I will prepare something particularly uncomfortable for you."
We were on a journey to visit our relatives, and nephews, and nieces, and first, second, and third cousins, and the other descendants of our grandfathers, who live on the east side of these truly hospitable mountains, said Thorin, not quite knowing what to say all at once in a moment, when obviously the exact truth was not true at all.
"He is a liar, oh truly tremendous one,"
said one of the drivers. "Several of our people were struck by lightning in the cave when we invited these creatures to come below, and they were as dead as stones. Also, he has not explained this." He held out the sword which Thorin had worn, the sword which came from the troll's lair. The great goblin gave a truly awful howl of rage when he looked at it, and all his soldiers gnashed their teeth, clashed their shields, and stamped. They knew the sword at once. It had killed hundreds of goblins in its time, when the fair elves of Gondolin hunted them in the hills, or did battle before their walls. They had called it Orcrist, goblin cleaver, but the goblins simply called it biter. They hated it, and hated worse anyone that carried it.
Murderers and elf friends!
The great goblin shouted.
Slash them, beat them, bite them, gnash them, take them away to dark holes full of snakes, and never let them see the light again.
He was in such a rage that he jumped off his feet and himself rushed at Thorin with his mouth open. Just at that moment, all the lights in the cavern went out, and a great fire went off, poof, into a tower of blue glowing smoke, right up to the roof, that scattered piercing white sparks all among the goblins. The yells and yammering, croaking, gibbering and jabbering, howls, growls and curses, shrieking and striking that followed were beyond desperation and description. Several hundred wild cats and wolves being roasted slowly alive together would not have compared with it. The sparks were burning holes in the goblins, and the smoke that now fell from the roof made the air too quick for even their eyes to see through. Soon they were falling over one another and rolling in heaps on the floor, biting and kicking and fighting as if they had all gone mad. Suddenly a sword flashed in its own light. Bilbo saw it go right through the great goblin as he stood dumbfounded in the middle of his rage. He fell dead, and the goblin soldiers fled before the sword, shrieking into the darkness. The sword went back into its sheath. "Follow me quick," said a voice, fierce and quiet, and before Bilbo understood what had happened, he was trotting along again, as fast as he could trot, at the end of the line, down more dark passages, with the yells of the goblin all growing fainter behind him. A pale light was leading them on. "Quicker, quicker," said the voice. "The torches will soon be relit."
"Half a minute,"
said Dory, who was at the back next to Bilbo, and a decent fellow. He made the hobbit scramble on his shoulders as best he could with his tied hands, and then off they all went at a run, with a clink of chains and many a stumble, as if they had no hands to steady themselves with. Not for a long while did they stop, and by that time they must have been right in the Merry Mountain's heart. Then Gandalf lit up his wand. Of course it was Gandalf, but just then they were too busy to ask how he got there. He took out his sword again, and again it flashed in the dark by itself. It burned with a rage that made it gleam if goblins were about. Now it was as bright as blue flame for delight in the killing of the great lord of the cave. It made no trouble whatever of cutting through the goblin chains and setting all the prisoners free as quickly as possible. This sword's name was Glamdring, the Foehammer, if you remember. The goblins just called it Beater, and hated it worse than Biter if possible. Orcrist too had been saved, for Gandalf had brought it along as well, snatching it from one of the terrified guards. Gandalf thought of most things, and though he could not do everything, he could do a great deal for friends in a tight corner.
"Are we all here?"
said he, handing his sword back to Thorin with a bow.
"Let me see. 1, that's Thorin. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Where are Philly and Killy? Oh, here they are. 12, 13, and here's Mr. Baggins, 14. Well, it might be worse, and then again it might be a good deal better. No ponies and no food, and no knowing quite where we are, and hordes of angry goblins just behind. On we go."
On they went. Gandalf was quite right. They began to hear goblin noises and horrible cries far behind, in the passages they had come through. That sent them on faster than ever, and as poor Bilbo could not possibly go half as fast, for dwarfs can roll along at a tremendous pace, I can tell you, when they have to, they took it in turns to carry him on their backs. Still, goblins go faster than dwarfs, and these goblins knew the way better. They had made the pass themselves, and they were madly angry, so that, do what they could, the dwarfs heard the cries and howls getting closer and closer. Soon they could hear even the flap of the goblin feet, many, many feet, which seemed only just round the last corner. The blink of red torches could be seen behind them in the tunnel they were following, and they were getting deadly tired. "Why, oh, why did I ever leave my hobbit hole?" said poor Mr. Baggins, pumping up and down on Bomber's back. "Why, oh, why did I ever bring a wretched little hobbit on a treasure hunt?" said poor Bomber, who was fat and staggered along with the sweat dripping down his nose in his heat and terror. At this point Gandalf fell behind and Thorin with him, but he turned a sharp corner. "About turn!" he shouted. "Draw your short sword, Thorin!" There was nothing else to be done, and the goblins did not like it. They came scurrying round the corner in full cry, and found Goblin Cleaver and Foehammer shining cold and bright, right in their astonished eyes. The ones in front dropped their torches and gave one yell before they were killed. The ones behind yelled still more, and leaped back, knocking over those that were running after them. "Bite her and beat her!" they shrieked, and soon they were all in confusion, and most of them were hustling back the way they had come. It was quite a long while before any of them dared to turn that corner. By that time the dwarves had gone on again, a long, long way on into the dark tunnels of the goblins' realm. When the goblins discovered that, they put out their torches, and they slipped on soft shoes, and they chose out their very quickest runners, with the sharpest ears and eyes. These ran forward as swift as weasels in the dark, and with hardly any more noise than bats. That is why neither Bilbo nor the dwarves, nor even Gandalf, heard them coming, nor did they see them, but they were seen by the goblins that ran silently up behind, for Gandalf was letting his wand give out a faint light to help the dwarves as they went along. Quite suddenly, Dory, now at the back again, carrying Bilbo, was grabbed from behind in the dark. He shouted and fell, and the hobbit rolled off his shoulders and into the blackness, bumped his head on hard rock, and remembered nothing more. So that's chapter 4, completed chapter 4 of The Hobbit. Okay, I'm really enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying listening to it as well. Okay, and chapter 5 will be up